Good morning, everyone. I'm Alicia Nottaman. Some of you know me as a psychologist, some of you know me as a business owner in the skincare industry and anti-aging, and some of you know me as the author of the book, Don't Be a Stranger, Creating Connections and Memorable First Impressions in Everyday Life. That said, I'm here to share just some knowledge from my psychologist brain today. I've been hearing a lot of conversations lately about sleep problems, especially heightened in the context of what's going on right now with quarantining and social distancing. And so I thought I'd hop on and offer a few just tidbits. Now, I always want to throw out the caution that I am not here to give clinical advice. Even though I am a psychologist, please consult your providers and your personal professionals with regard to any advice or suggestions or consultation. I'm merely offering this advice to basically, I love to give back. I love to give back to the people that have really supported me and been the wind beneath my wings in just being a part of my world and my network. And so I want to thank you all for that. And my way of thanking you is sharing knowledge. I just went dim, and so I'm hoping that you guys can still see me okay. All right, so first of all, why would we be experiencing an increase in sleep problems? Well, if you think about it, right now, our brains are activated on a whole new level. So the human brain is wired to want to solve problems and to want to fix things and to solve things and resolve things. And right now, this feels really out of control for almost everyone. I don't really know anybody who feels like they have a good sense of control over what's going on. That doesn't mean that they're not functioning well. That doesn't mean they're not controlling what's within their realm of control, but it's unsettling. And what happens in our brain when things are unsettled? It gets into like higher levels of activation to try to solve it. And a lot of times we try to solve problems in our sleep. We don't do this consciously, but it's often what keeps us awake at nights. Our brain is trying to figure things out, and that therefore makes it more difficult to wind down and allow you to get into restful sleep. And even then, sometimes our nightmares, sometimes our dreams are a manifestation of what we are experiencing and thinking about during the day, playing out at night through our dreams in an effort to try to come up with an answer. And so oftentimes I encourage people to think about, what could this dream be representing? What could it mean? Is there something you're dealing with your daytime, just kind of thought process that's playing out? Or what were you watching TV-wise, or programs, or anything that you were exposing yourself to or absorbing in an hour or two before sleep? Was it activating? Was it something that would create tension or drama or excitement or fear? And it doesn't have to be bad stuff, but is it an action movie that got you all activated? Because if so, I recommend not watching action movies before sleep if you're somebody that's struggling with sleep. In fact, I recommend sitcoms and just light humor or something boring. I used to say watch something or read about the mating habits of grasshoppers, but quite frankly, that sounds fascinating. So if that sounds fascinating to you, don't read that. Read something that's soothing, calming, potentially boring. If you're a student, read about one of your more boring classes and allow that to put you to sleep, but do not read in bed. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. So the idea here being, you want to adapt proper sleep hygiene. And a lot of people lean on medications to help them sleep. And I am absolutely going to often encourage my patients, unless it's extreme, let's try everything behavioral first. Let's look at everything non-medication first, because I want to empower you to realize that you don't need to necessarily depend on a medication to sleep well. Now, there are exceptions, of course, where there's reasons why somebody really does need to rely on a medication because of other coexisting, co-occurring issues that might be interfering. But nevertheless, I'm always going to start with the least invasive approach first. So what does that mean? It means behavioral training. So first I want to say I have tons of information, education, resources, YouTube links on my website, which is www.foranewYou2.com. And it's the number 4 and the number 2, foranewYou2.com. If you go under Emotional Confidence tab, and then there's a sleep and relaxation section, there's worksheets, there's sleep diaries, there's YouTube videos. I also recommend an app, a free app that you would download on your phone that can help induce relaxation and sleep. Really great apps you might consider that are often, at least have free versions, are Calm, C-A-L-M, Headspace, or Insight Timer are a few of my favorites, but there's lots to pick from. There's another, I think, called Happify that also has a coinciding website. So first of all, let's talk for a moment about other things that could be impacting why you're experiencing sleep problems. So it could certainly be stress and environmental factors, which again, right now with what's going on with quarantining and social distancing, that's stressful for some people. What's the implications of it are stressful. What's causing it, what's needing it, what's making it a necessity is stressful. People's health being compromised, the fears of our loved ones being impacted, and to the degree that I'm hearing people say that, you know, they're going outside and people aren't even making eye contact for fear of exposing each other. And, you know, some people might think that that's extreme, but it's just a natural response to fear. It's a natural response to self-preservation, as well as an interest in preserving others. So I encourage you and implore you to please see it through a lens of kindness and compassion rather than judgment. So that said, other factors that could influence sleep could be pregnancy, menopause, chronic pain, major depression. You know, we often in psychology say that if you have trouble falling asleep, that could be an indication of anxiety, not is, could be. And if you have trouble staying asleep, that could be an indication of depression. Again, food for thought, just, you know, areas to think about and consult a professional in your world about whether there could be some truth to that. Chronic illness, cancers, cardiopulmonary diseases, Alzheimer's or dementia, these can all also impact and interfere with sleep. Work hours, if you're somebody that works a night shift or perhaps works later hours, it just might be harder for you to wind down, or your circadian rhythm might be off, right? Because we're typically used to sleeping when the sun goes down and it's nighttime, but that's not the case for everyone. And then an increased risk with sleep problems is also an increased risk for obesity, hypertension, and impaired immune system, which of course then leaves us more compromised. So these are just a few of the factors that I wanted to throw out there. So now what do we do about it? So folks on a call that I was on last night were asking this, and I just wanted to share a few tidbits. So first of all, I want to start by saying, you know, I don't know how many of you in my network are familiar with Pavlov's classic conditioning experiments with the dogs, the salivating dogs. If you don't know what I'm talking about, YouTube it. It is fascinating. And the idea here is I want you to remember this mantra. The bed is for sleep and sex only. The bed is for sleep and sex only. That's it. If you are someone that struggles with sleep problems, or even if you're not, I encourage you to see the bed as a sacred place of rest and sleep. And I don't mean rest as in lay there, you know, when you want to rest. I mean lay there when you're ready to go to sleep. So you want to classically condition your brain to see the bed as a place where sleep happens. If you munch in bed or snack or eat, if you watch TV, if you read in bed, you're classically conditioning your bed to become a place of other things. So your brain naturally does not think sleep when it goes to look at the bed. And you want to retrain your brain, which can be done often in a very short period of time, weeks. But you've got to be disciplined, you've got to be consistent, right? So start changing your patterns. Only go to bed when you're sleepy or ready to sleep. And if within 20 minutes you are not falling asleep, get up and out. So do not lay in that bed longer than 20 minutes if you're not falling asleep. So go sit in a chair, go into the living room, go for a walk, whatever you do, just don't lay there wide awake in bed, and certainly don't stare at that clock and think, oh my gosh, now I have 1 less hour to sleep. Oh my gosh, I have to be up in 4 hours. I have to get to sleep. Imagine, it's not very effective when you try to put pressure on yourself, on your already stressed out, anxious brain, to try to impel it and peer pressure it into doing what you want it to do. It just doesn't work very well, right? So avoid napping during the day. If you nap during the day, you're making it excessively more hard for you to fall asleep at night. So try your best to avoid daytime naps so that you are tired come nighttime. Regulate sleep and wake times. So what do I mean by that? Go to bed and wake at the exact same times every single day, irrespective of whether you have a reason to wake up. And you might be thinking, but Alicia, I fell asleep at 4 a.m. That only gives me 3 hours if my wake up time is 7 a.m. and it's a Saturday. And I'll say yes. The reason for this, the rationale, is that if you continue to do this consistently for 2 weeks, your brain will eventually fall into line. It's going to catch on. Hey, she's making me wake up, or he's making me wake up every day at 7 a.m. So I better go ahead and fall asleep earlier because I'm exhausted, and this person's gonna make me get up in 3 hours. So now granted, your brain doesn't have a voice, but that's kind of the process, and that's what it would be saying to itself if it spoke. So you wanna really ensure that you set that wake and sleep and wake cycle. Now again, if you're not falling asleep, get up and out, but make yourself get out of bed at that set time every single day and start keeping a sleep diary. As I mentioned on my website, furnayu2.com, under the emotional confidence, there are links to sleep diaries. You could also just Google sleep diaries and find a version that you feel comfortable with. It'll track your thoughts before bed. It'll track your activities. What did you do? Did you dream? Did you nightmare? What time did you wake up? So that you can become a student of your own behavior. Because did you know sleep is a set of regulated behaviors? Sleep's a behavior. And so I want you to consider this as a way of thinking through behavioral training and behavioral shaping around sleep. Avoid large meals or drinks just before sleep, because again, it leaves you feeling a little bit unsettled. Did I say avoid exercise regularly before sleep? Well, exercise regularly, but avoid exercise right before sleep rather. So exercise will help induce tiredness and fatigue and help you sleep better. But if you do it right before sleep, sometimes it'll get your adrenaline running. Now, for some people, it's the opposite. Yoga, for example, or slow, mindful exercise or stretching could be helpful. But you'll know your body better than I would or somebody else, right? So pay attention to those patterns. Avoid anything with caffeine after 2 p.m. and then monitor how much caffeine you're having before 2 p.m. Maybe set a goal to start drinking a little bit less caffeine, because in fact what often happens is the opposite. When people are experiencing sleep problems, they start upping their caffeine level so that they're alert during the day, but of course invariably what ends up happening is then they're terribly awake come at night and they can't fall asleep. Also, avoid the use of alcohol and nicotine as much as possible. So not only can these increase your issues with sleep, but also anxiety. So if you didn't know, stimulants, caffeine, alcohol, coffee, these can actually spike anxiety. Let's see, finally, avoid worrying right before bed. And in fact, keep a notepad or a slip of paper right by your bed. And if you find yourself starting to worry about things as you're trying to fall asleep, instead of giving voice to those worries in that hour before falling asleep, just pick up the notepad, write down what you're worrying about, and worry about tomorrow. Tell yourself, I'll deal with this tomorrow. I'll resolve this tomorrow. I'll deal with this week. And set a deadline, right? So write down the problem and the deadline. And that way, in the morning, you can look back at it and your brain can then shelve it. By the way, that could be really effective during the day with what's called a worry period. If you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to shoot me a message and I'm happy to do a video on the worry period, because that can also be a very powerful tool to managing anxiety. Okay. Make sure I haven't missed anything. Meditation can help tremendously, by the way, with sleep induction. With meditation, though, I think you could really benefit from using one of those apps as you first start learning how the meditation process can be effective. A few things to think about controlling to help you get to sleep could be the temperature of the room. Sometimes if it's too cold, too warm, if you're uncomfortable, that will also impact your ability to fall asleep comfortably. So consider adjusting the temperature. For some people, they find if they're colder, that will help them fall asleep. But of course, if you're too cold and you're miserable, that could backfire. Avoid or manage the light. So exposure to light inhibits the ability to fall asleep, and bright light in the morning especially can shorten sleep. So manage the light. Dark is often better. Now, of course, you've got to be careful. If you happen to get blackout curtains and you have a 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. wake time, it is very easy to ignore your alarm and sleep half the day with those blackout curtains, and you continue to make the problem worse, right? So have a very loud alarm. In fact, there's an alarm, I don't know what it's called, but you could actually order it and it flutters around the room. Now that seems like a safety hazard, so please be careful. But the idea being you can't just smack it off, it'll stay on until you get up out of bed and catch it. Brilliant idea, as long as you don't get hurt. We did not talk about noise. So outside noise, inside noise, dog movements or dog, sounds, traffic, the TV, music, phones ringing, computer sounds or alerts. All of these can interfere with your ability to sleep. If you're somebody that leaves your computer or your phone on in the room when you go to sleep, these can interfere with your ability to get a good quality sleep. So consider if you can put all of that stuff in another room. Consider turning off any lights or putting your phone on a do not disturb. Consider perhaps a noise machine to break down or to interfere with ambient noise, right? To give you a little bit of a humming sound. Some people like falling asleep to sounds of an ocean or water. Some people fall asleep to sounds of a dishwasher. I've experienced that before, and it's very peculiar, but it works for some people. And then typically, as far as the temperature, I do want to point out that sleep is often better in a cool room. 65 degrees, too hot or too cold can inhibit sleep. So again, be mindful of that. And somebody else sleeping in bed absolutely can impact your sleep. So for me, you could consider investing in one of those mattresses where I think it's a Sleep Number, where one person can adjust the firmness or movement of the bed and another person can adjust so that if one shifts, the whole bed doesn't move around. Some people love water beds. They find the movement of the water in the bed to be really soothing. So I hope you find some value in this. I would always encourage, try to enforce these behavioral sleep strategies before you turn to any medication. And then if you do ultimately resort to a medication, consider, again, with your doctor's advice and guidance, an over-the-counter like a melatonin before you consider a prescription medication that could end up becoming addicting. You want to really do your best to avoid that so much as possible. And again, oftentimes people underestimate the power in just discipline, the power in the behavioral training that is 100% within your control. Not easy, but within your control, and simple step processes. So if you want to review any of the information I've gone through, again, please go to my website. You'll find these under the sleep section. There's actually a titled document that says behavioral sleep strategies for sleep regulation, and open that file and review it and see which of these things am I doing and which am I not, and see if you can change around some of your habits around sleep hygiene. With that, thank you for joining me. And again, I just want to say how grateful I am for everybody on this platform. I started this channel and I started doing these videos as just kind of a way to give back and say thank you to those that were supporting me in my business world with my skincare industry and now with the book. I'm so grateful for each one of you. Every single person that likes, comments, or engages with me over these videos and over my posts, you all are the wind beneath my wings. You all are the ones that keep me going and make me feel like I am making an impact, even if it's teeny weeny, and even if it's with one person. That's worth it to me. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you, because you all are the ones that keep me going. So with that, thank you so much, and I hope you have an amazing day. Mwah! Bye.